Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the panel for The World is Bright. My name is Kelly Strawn. I'm the Executive Artistic Director at Workman Arts, the presenters of Rendezvous with Madness. Now, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the Indigenous land on which I am presently located, and you can think about the land that you are on. I am in Toronto, which comes from the Ganyan-Keha word Takaronto, which can be translated as where the trees meet the water. It is part of the traditional territories of many nations, the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Now, Workman Arts recognizes that this is an ongoing dialogue. We are grateful to live and work on this land with all people, those Indigenous to Turtle Island, and those from all over the world. So welcome. Our moderator for today's discussion is Meghan Yuri Young. So Meghan is a breakfast television correspondent and mental health advocate and is the founder of the SAD Collective, which is an online community of people talking honestly and openly about mental health struggles. Our panelists are Ying Wang, the director of The World is Bright, Lawrence Wong, who is Shi-Ming's family lawyer, Dr. Kenneth Fung, a clinical director at the Asian Initiative in Mental Health Clinic at the Toronto Western Hospital, and Bonnie Wong, the Executive Director of Hong Fook Mental Health Association. Thank you to the Toronto Sign Language Interpretation Service for providing ASL interpretation. Thank you to Closed Caption Service for providing the live captioning. Now, in order to see the captions, you just click on that closed caption button to the right of your screen. We have an active listener, Kat Singer, joining us. We value making time to discuss difficult content at Rendezvous with Madness, but respect that you know your own limits, and if you require support, please get in touch with them directly. You can text or email, and their information is on our website, workmanarts.com, and go to the World is Bright event page, and you will find Kat's information. Now, if you would like to ask a question, please type the question into the question box on your screen. So you may need to minimize your screen in order to see that question box to the right. Workman Arts values inclusivity, anti-oppression, and safety at all levels. Everyone has a role to play in maintaining that spirit and to ensure that we are all treating each other with respect. You can find our code of conduct on our website at workmanarts.com. So now it gives me great pleasure to hand things over to our moderator, Meghan. Oh, you are muted.
Muted, I know. Etiquette is muting, and I forgot already how to work a virtual panel. Thank you so much for that introduction, Kelly. I'm so honored to be here to moderate this conversation. I am half Korean, half Sri Lankan, so I feel like in many regards, this story is just, it's so aligned with my own family's history. And so I can only imagine you tuning in what your backgrounds are and what your experience are, whether it's you or your friends or your family. I think this is a story that really resonates with so many people. So my first question will be to Ying, the director. So immigration is part of Canada's DNA. There's a constant influx of newcomers, COVID aside. And so although The World is Bright focuses on a Chinese family, as I said, I feel like this is a story that resonates with so many people from all cultures. Ying, in an interview from last year, you mentioned that you were full of frustrations and self-doubts editing this story after filming long exceeded your original timeline. Why was it so important for you to finish this documentary after working on it for more than a decade?
Thank you, Morgan. And first, I want to thank you, the festival, for inviting the film. And thanks, Lawrence Wong, for supporting the project for the past decades. And also, it's great to reconnect with Dr. Fung and Bonnie. So we met in 2017 when we went to Toronto to interview you. So it's great that we connect here, and now we can really share the thoughts on these issues. So back to Morgan's question. Actually, it was exactly because of the universality and the relevance of the story you mentioned that have been drawing us to carry on and to continue explore and finish the story. Because at the beginning, when we started following the family, our focus was mainly on the legal case. But along the way, quickly, there are so many layers of the issues revealed in front of us. So Shi-Ming's mental health, and then this family story, family history, and then we dive into the immigration system. So all this complexity involved in this one particular story that make us feel it's so relevant actually to our daily experience in this contemporary society. You know, the stigma around mental illness and the global migration. And also we all have the experience to be beaten down by the system, by the bureaucracy. Also, I think for the past decades, when the case was growing, that was also the time the world, including Canada, experienced some quite drastic change in terms of demographic and also the political. So during the past decade, there are so many international students, particularly from Asia and particularly from mainland China, come to Canada, and as well as other developed countries. So we saw them more and more in our society. But who are they? What are the stories behind them? And sometimes we saw the murder case or some suicide case or some deportation case involved in this population. But there's still, until now, there's no meaningful representation about this group of people, and including the new immigrants. So because I came to Canada as an international student first, and then become landed immigrant, and I was only 4 years apart from Shi-Ming. So I grew up in the same culture and history period that when China just finished the poverty period and began its modernization. So I strongly feel this is not only his story, it's also my story, and also the story of this group of people and this generation. And if I don't tell this, nobody would tell it. So I think this strong feeling, this strong belief that motivated me to just continue to finish it. And also because all these complexities and the different layers involved in the story, so that make the editing period became extremely difficult. So it took us more than 2 years to really put it together, because we realized that the issues with mental illness, it's all this complex factor contribute to this issue. And particularly in Shi-Ming's case, there are so many gray areas, and none of them is not necessary. Like none of them contribute to this family tragedy. So eventually we decided to really dive deep into this parent's journey, and through diving deep in one story, and with hope we can reveal the universal, and then we believe that can resonate with a broader audience.
Sorry, I keep on forgetting that I'm muted. I think that's so beautiful how relentlessly you pursued this story for so many reasons. And I think the first thing that stood out was that building that empathy for others. You're building a story that others can put their feet in those shoes, and to really truly empathize with the situation. And I think that's so important. That you carried that through, and then to know that you resonated with it yourself it just means that there was that personal touch that you brought to the film. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you. And also, sorry, I also want to add is the process of making the film is also for us to understand the relationship, particularly between the immigration, mental illness, and the legal system. So actually, in 2017, we did an outreach interview. So we interviewed, experts like Bonnie and Dr. Fung, and we interviewed over like 20 experts working in this field. That this new understanding and the deeper understanding of the issue also, drive us is really want to share all this knowledge. But it's just unfortunately because of the length of the film. At the end, we decided to take out the interviews, only keep the family story so that we can have a more open, so leave the audience more open interpretation and understanding. Yeah, but eventually all these interviews, we will put them online and to share their knowledge with the broader public.
That's something I champion through my platform, the SAD Collective, is awareness, education, critical thinking. Again, that's what I think your film brings. It's this, you dive deeply into a really important story and subject matter that regardless of the conversation that continues to deepen around mental health, we still lack, I think. So the fact that you brought such awareness and then decided to interview all these experts as well is so important. And so I'm actually going to move forward with the questions to get some insight from our other panelists. Ying, though, I love from that same interview that I just quoted, there was a quote that you said, migration is not one direction, it's back and forth, and people get caught in between. And I thought that observation was so beautiful. But my question now is to Lawrence. Shi-Ming's family hired you as their immigration lawyer, and according to another article I read, you took their case pro bono. Why did you do that?
Well, first of all, I don't think they can afford, legal fees, the legal fees of this country, because they're very expensive. And secondly, I think when people need help, you don't like to say no to people, and yet our bureaucracy, our institution, and our society tend to say more no's than yes to people who need help. And so at the time, I think I was thinking, it's going to be very time consuming. It's going to be very involved process to help this old couple to find out what happened to their son. But, if I just try to save time for myself to play more sports or things like that, then instead of helping them, then I don't think I could do that. So I think, from a personal standpoint, I don't like to say no to people who really need help, and I think that's the main reason why I was willing to help them.
That's so beautiful. That and the acknowledgement that not everyone can afford the legal fees to not only find closure for themselves, but then to, advocate for others to not go through this again. To build off of that initial question, Lawrence, having worked on this case, and I'm assuming many more similar to this one, what have you learned about the migration process in Canada?
Well, the migration process, it just deepens my belief that the system is to create expectation on newcomers, and basically if you cannot cope, then you're not welcome. And it's very realistic in that sense. It's like Canadians tend to think that why do we need immigrants? Well, we need them because they're supposed to come here and work their ass off for us. And if you come here and you have problems, and we don't really need you. And we don't really have anything to deal with that problem except, we leave you alone if you don't break the law. But if you break the law, then we'll put you out of the country. Mm-hmm. So that realization is always there, even before I took on the case. It's just that the system when you think about it, the residential school, the last residential school was closed in 1996. That's how long it took, like more than 100 years. So system does not improve itself. Everybody in the system follow the rules and the norms, and they're doing the right thing at the time because that's what the law says and that's what they do. So to bring about changes, it would be very difficult. It's up to the individual who are in the system or who are not in the system to do what they think is the right thing, or what is the good thing. It might not be the right thing, but what is a good thing. So having said that, this film hopefully will bring some attention to the subject matter. I don't know how many CBSA officers have seen it, or how many decision makers at the immigration division, people in charge of deciding whether you get to stay or whether you don't get to stay in this country. I think it's useful that they should have a chance to watch this film and see the other angle of it.
Yes, I feel like what you've learned from the process, and then I was going to follow that up with the question of what do you think would actually bring about change? Like, what could we actually do to change the system? But one, I feel like you already just said it, is just like getting films like The World is Bright in front of the right people, so that they have a better understanding of the difficulties, to better, recognize immigrants as humans, they're not just capital, they're not just here to work hard, they're here to build a life. But is there anything you would want to add in terms of how we can better change, how can the system change to better help newcomers?
I think, unfortunately, it's up to the individuals who have contact with them, whose job is to help them to really get to the bottom of it and try to make some, rather than just going through the motion, rather than just doing management, to put their heart into it and spend the time necessary to really help people who or to understand them at least, so that you're not going to look at them with tainted glasses and all that.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Thank you so much, Lawrence. My next question involves the many layers to this story, and I'm sure a story similar to this, that it still happened to this day. Kenneth and Bonnie, the theme of mental health runs heavy throughout the documentary, from Shi-Ming's own struggle to the grief that the parents experienced after his death. What were your observations about this particular story that stood out to each of you? Maybe Bonnie, we can start with you.
Thank you. The first reaction I have for listening to the story, as well as listening to Ying's description of her experience in producing this film, I have a lot of reflections. First of all, I'm just thinking about how we failed this young man. What has happened? What are the gaps in to make it happen? What the system has failed this person. That why the system is not supposed to help people, but it seems it's to hurt people. So what has happened? Going back to our work in the community, supporting people with mental illness, or preventing more people when they are suffering from that, what they can get support or treatment about. So the first reaction I have is I really want to echo the importance of raising awareness. It is not just to any single individuals, but it is a lot of education to providers as well in different sectors, whether it is in educational training environment, service providers, health providers, first responders, legal system, because they are here to support, but they need to know what are the gaps in the system, what their services are, not why they're not meeting the needs of the individuals. And there are a lot of information popping now in the media or in the social media or in many, but often we found there were a lot of fake information, not accurate, or when people really for help, the service is not there right for them. Especially for immigrants who have very little literacy on mental health, or the English is not their first language. So information availability, access, how equitable it is, I think it is some challenges there. And then in terms of education to providers, how we, make sure that it's culturally competent or culturally sensitive approach are in place. So I think one thing is more to do is on education to raise awareness so that more people will talk about this topic, and the more people become more aware. Mental illness, mental health is not one single illness, just like a flu. It's a spectrum of illness that is different levels of complexity that need intervention. And everybody can be the first responder on mental health. We need to get training on it. We need to talk about it. And then the second thing I found is about the challenges of wait time for people to seek help. No matter whether it's in hospital environment, community environment, admission to a program, there's always a wait time challenge. No matter how hard you try, the supply and demand are always not equal in that end. So we have to be creative. You have to find ways like me more innovative. So other important thing is just like you're doing a promotion with a product, you just sell it. It's not sometimes making sense to people. We really need that more marketing on mental health and mental illness in order to find it relates to you. So I think the media and the social media, we need to work closely together to promote that product and make the product that is easy to be accessible, and also it is buy-in. Just giving some example, when we are providing a training on mental health and mental illness, the registration is so limited. Nobody signed up. And we were saying, what's wrong with that, right? It is a place where you can get education. And then we changed the marketing strategy by saying that we are recruiting volunteers to help people with mental health. And then within 2 weeks, we have 120 registrations. So that is an important learning that we have. It is how we deal with it. And then when we do a good promotion marketing, our intake program found it very difficult because the increase of intake costs were 120% of the colors. So there are always resources challenge there to help to make that link how we plan our strategies. So there are some learnings from that end. And then we talk about treatment programs because many of the services are so silos. And people may have to continue refer out from the current provider to others. And during that process, we lost people very often because there's not a warm transfer to transition people. So we are learning all this from our experience. That's why we really promote a holistic health approach to try to increase the different resources to build solid programs that people can, from early intake and referral to program getting stable housing, to get treatment and access to psychiatry, access to primary care, and then access to programs that support people's recovery. And then provide support to family members, provide education to providers like settlement workers. They are the first group of people. They help immigrants and refugees. So we are devoted in many different initiatives in order to continue to engage and also invest a lot on prevention promotion. That's to raise awareness, building people competence, and in order to be able to cope with different needs. So I think for an organization like Hong Fook, we are doing a lot, but we know there are others, they are doing a lot, but they are lacking of some of the resources that is more agricultural specific, because many issues that raised from that film, from Ying's film, they talk about a lot issues about particular culture group, that the family dynamics are very different, and how those family values dictating people's feeling and thinking and their behavior. So that is a lot impacting people's choices, impacting people making decisions and seeking help. If the recent, longitudinal study from CAMH, they talk about the top group of people involuntary admission to hospital, as Chinese is one of the top. They are Chinese and South Asians. So they are actually becoming so sick up to the point that the last stage, there's no other choice. They be apprehended to go to the hospital for involuntary treatment. So that tells there are families that may put up so much to keep people well at home, but it's not the case. The reasons why they are not sending them for treatment is because of shame, pride, stigma, and not a good experience maybe. I give an example. We had a young fellow, international students. It's willing to seek help for psychiatry help. Unfortunately, that the psychiatrist is not culturally sensitive to the issue, and the youth has difficulty to express the feelings. They get easily to talk about something concrete, but talk about feelings become so difficult. To talk about what is not well in them, in their brain, in their feelings. And then the doctor say, oh, you're wasting my time. You're here for like 40 minutes and you're not telling me what's wrong with you. You are wasting my time. Do you think this young fellow will go back and get help again?
Yeah.
That's just some of my observations. That are challenges there.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. There was so much there. There was so much knowledge, again, just as Ying had mentioned with her. Probably, I can't even imagine the interviews that Ying has that she will be sharing eventually. But that was just, I was kind of taking mental notes, and then I can't even. But one of the things that stood out is the awareness piece of just drawing more awareness, but proper awareness, especially as someone on social media that my career kind of hinges on it. I recently noted how I've stepped away from social media activism because I don't have the time to research the information that's being circulated on Instagram, for instance. So I find it hard to reshare what could be really important, well-researched information, but because I can't critically think or take the time to dig deeper, you don't know. And so I'm afraid now to like share a lot of things. So I think that was one of the things that stuck out just for me personally, in addition to marketing mental health better, and also just like getting people the actual help, not just bringing awareness, but now how do you actually bring them help? Thank you so much, Bonnie. Kenneth, to you, basically the exact same conversation, the question of what did you observe while from this particular story from Ying's documentary that stood out to you? And if you want to just go also right into like what lessons we've learned or what we can do to better support them from a mental health side, feel free.
Sure, thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me to the panel. I just want to acknowledge the organizer for what a wonderful job and what an important thing you are doing, the Rendezvous of Madness and Workman Arts. And I want to start off by saying what impressed me is the film itself. Ying has just done an incredible job of having a documentary that it really is beyond like just a documentary. It's also so artistic and tells such a human story. With elements of everything. There's a mystery, there's like the light that goes on and off, but there's also so many human dimension to it, touching on the social, the cultural, and the psychological aspects. So just a wonderful feat of accomplishment. And for me, it's a huge pleasure today to meet the hero, also one of the heroes, protagonists in the story of Lawrence Wong. I just want to say, like, when I was watching the film, I was really moved by you personally. So just when you feel that you cannot trust any lawyer, you just only need to watch the film and you start to believe in humans again. You start to believe in humanity and lawyers again. So just what you have done, it's very touching. And there are parts of it that I think that would suggest you would make a very good therapist too. to help the family in healing, both legally but also psychologically.
I'm actually going to jump in for 1 second, Kenneth. I feel like you nailed something on the head where I feel, last year I took mental health first aid, a first aid course. And although of course, all the things that I went through in the 2-day workshop, you know, a lot of it was common sense, but still I forget a lot of the things. And thankfully I have yet to practice what I learned. It's that the idea that what might be able to help society on a big scale is everyone potentially being trained as a therapist or a social worker or having that mental health first aid background to really truly connect and ask the right questions. I just wanted to, because I thought that was such a great observation of Lawrence's character. Sorry, Kenneth.
And I think Lawrence wanted to just have a response.
Oh, I just want to thank you for your kind comments, but the problem with mental health is we try to treat mental patients with medication, and medication really is just a management way of dealing with a problem that they cannot solve. Like my own brother he suffers from mental illness, so he's been through the system, and the system actually doesn't work, but we don't have a better way to deal with them. We just have to give them forced medication if they don't take it. And nobody is going to have time for, you know, trying to help mental patients to solve their problems or try to talk to them in a way that that can maybe give them some way out of the trap that they find themselves in, because a lot of them, they don't want to take medication. They don't think they are sick, right?
Yes, great. So I can see that there's a lot of personal motivation behind this too. So that's wonderful to hear. And again, just outstanding of, you know, what you've done and what you've expressed in the film is very beautiful. In terms of what my also other observations in the film, I guess I can discuss it in 3 layers. First, there's the personal human dimensions of the story of Shi-Ming himself. I think that we definitely learn what can happen to someone who is young at that kind of age, that formative age of high school, university, young adulthood. We know as a psychiatrist and in the mental health field that that is the age of vulnerability. That's the age where most major mental illness, like schizophrenia, that, you know, Shi-Ming has, or even depression or bipolar, they all appear around that, and for a number of reasons. But certainly one of the impact is just the stress of transitions, life transitions, developmentally, and all the kind of stressors. And we see that's really beautifully illustrated in this film that Shi-Ming is a smart person. Like, it's not the, sometimes we have stigma that, oh, it must be that lazy person or a stupid person, but he's neither. He's both smart and hardworking and accomplished. So this can happen to anybody. Mental illness can happen to the smartest, most talented, promising, gifted person. I think that's important to notice. And by and large, people with mental illness are not violent. And so you can hear that Shi-Ming, you know, talk about he didn't really want to hurt anybody. It doesn't mean that they don't have a potential for hurting other people or even themselves. I think tragically in this case, if they don't get the help in those moments of desperation with symptoms that are not being treated. I think it shows both a balance of, no, they are not all violent people. They are just friendly people who wants to do their best. And yet if they don't get the help, yes, then there are problems. That's what we need to face. And this issue of being a student, we know from student centers that many students don't want to get help, but particularly international students are vastly underrepresented. So this is time and again in the literature, especially Asian students are super reluctant to get help. So in major city centers, immigrant centers, you'll have huge amount of international students. They are vastly underrepresented in getting, even school counseling because of stigma, because of cultural issues. So I think in this first layer, it emphasized the importance of what we call in the field early intervention and making paths accessible for people in need, especially when they first have mental illness. I think this obviously is a story both about Shi-Ming and family being front and center. So the second layer is to really understand the impact of mental illness on not just an individual, but also on those around them. That includes their family. And this case, obviously the center is the parents, but also we see a glimpse throughout of what happened with his wife that started off with like a beautiful story and end up after a year of divorce, with a difficult ending. So I think that understanding the family dimension is one that's, I would say, basically lacking in any healthcare system, especially in a westernized system where it's routinely taught that you treat the patient. And even when there are patient rights, it's often individual patient rights. So I think that once in a country like Canada, where there are diverse cultures, we need to obviously broaden it to really understand the impact on the family. And so when we talk about stigma and need for understanding and treatment for an individual, we also need to bring that to the family level. How do we also help families understand? How do we also help families decrease their own sense of stigma and shame that's really well articulated in the movie? And then how do we support them? Because I think it's just really a travesty and tragic what's happened to the family. I think that if we talk about stigma, I think the film shows a multiple layer of what stigma is. Stigma is what is unsaid, what's unspeakable. And I think in the film, it shows the multiple angles of, it's not just simply teaching everyone psychoeducation. It's also understand from a cultural point of view, why people don't say certain things to each other. So here, obviously, Shi-Ming didn't tell the parents all along that he's suffering, that he's fine all the time. And when the family even had a hint of, okay, got hospitalized, or they don't have the hard time believing it, they don't want to tell the extended family, etc. Right? And then there is the breakdown in communication between husband and son, but even between the father and the mother, right? They filter information for each other, and then of course the father and the grandmother or his mother, it's filtered. And so when you look at that, is it just education going to solve it? I think the simple answer is no. Because we understand the reason they don't say is more than just lack of information. It's certainly part of it. Part of it is they didn't know what to do. As he said, they didn't know the danger. They didn't know what the proper treatment is. But there's another part of stigma. And part of it is really tied to caring for each other. So I think that that's a strong, very strong message, because sometimes, especially even in the field for people who want to do better, what they portray is, well, immigrants are just backwards, they have stigma, so they're ignorant and they're stupid. But what we see is people don't say things to each other, but because they care and love each other so much. So if we flip this around, change our dimensions of how to think about it, from one of lack of information to one of they're coming out from a place of love and caring for each other's feelings. And maybe that's how we need to think about how we reach out to families so that they can better take care of one another, because that's where we can really be effective. So that's the second layer. And I think the final piece is the structural piece. I think that we know from, again, research that immigrants has the healthy immigrant effect, that people like Shi-Ming who comes to Canada, they are bright, they are like super top elite students who come and want to have a bright future. They get to, you know, in the cartoon moment of boarding a rocket ship, right? That all the family hopes is on this person, right? They send the brightest to be international students, and immigrants are coming here because of the point system, either because they are successful in business or they are academically excel. And we know that the healthy immigrant effect says that immigrants come over with a super physical and mental health, and it's the system that grinds them down and they have the impact. So we should dispel the impact that, oh, all these sick immigrants are coming to leech the system. It's not. It's actually, we are bringing the best and the brightest, but it's the system grinding them down so that they become ill. So I think we need to confront that. And the sharing of the mother saying that I thought about committing suicide right in front of the immigration office is so powerful. It's not even the first time I've heard it. I've heard it multiple times, and I don't have a law practice, obviously, but so many of the immigrants talk about the unfairness of the system, whether it's workers' compensation or getting social benefits or getting housing or having their refugee status recognized. I hear this a lot of, I'm just gonna kill myself, and so people would know. But this is what immigrants are facing in terms of system issues. So coming back to what we can do, then we need to reach out to the individual, then we reach out to the family. And I echo what Bonnie has also touched on, which is we need the system to change. So that does include training of all kind of workers, not only mental health, but certainly border guards and judges and lawyers. I think that's part of it. And there needs to be active advocacy, like someone like Lawrence, who can stand up for the little person. And how do we also do community advocacy? And how do we build a community of passion like Meghan, you have done with your collective work and using social media these days? I think that's what we see with Black Lives Movement. That's what we see with some of the social movements. That's what we need more of, which is this kind of collective action. And so I think taking care of a family like that, like Lawrence is saying, both allowing them to know that, like I have so many patients that I say almost the same thing as what Lawrence said, like you can basically sell your house in China and sell everything you own to fight against the government, and you might still lose. And you might still need to, lead your own life. That's part of it. So self-care is important. And at the same time, it's also important to take that first step that's reasonable to contest the system. And then ultimately what needs to happen is to coming together as a collective, so that there will be collective community actions, not just on one person selling their life savings. It's a whole community rising up. And I think that, Ying's work, Meghan, your work, I think this work of spreading the word out through mass media for awareness, for community action, would be another layer to address this bigger issue in the room.
Thank you so much, Kenneth. You with Bonnie and even Lawrence's observations in regards from an expert point of view were honestly so eye-opening and enlightening. And in as a person who I feel like consumes a lot of information, especially involving mental health advocacy, I want to tell you three that I learned so much from this conversation that I haven't, from a different perspective that I haven't had. So I want to thank you for that. I do have a question from the audience. I'm just going to read it verbatim. Thank you, Ying, for this powerful film and all of your insights. It's so disappointing systems fail, Shi-Ming. I'm wondering whether there have been any immigration reforms or any campaigns you know of to better support international students and immigrants. So if you're aware of any, maybe any four of you, but I think Ying, this might be a question for you. If throughout this, making this documentary, have you come across any changes actually within the system, any immigration reforms, or any campaigns that will better support international students and immigrants? Also, you're muted.
To be honest, actually, I haven't seen a lot. I think the process is more to really find out the problems. But of course, nowadays, there's a more current discussion about international students, but I feel it's still on the very, very superficial level. Yeah. So maybe Lawrence and others can have some more insights.
Again, to just repeat that part, the part of the question is, this person is wondering whether there have been any immigration reforms or campaigns that better support international students and immigrants.
Is it my turn to say something?
If you want, Lawrence, you can take it.
Well, there really isn't particular program to address the issue of mental illness. There are programs that give you language training. There's community support programs and things like that. But it's, as Wayne said, it's at a superficial level. It's not, you know, it's just basically expectation-wise is if you're an international student, if you become an immigrant, it's because you have the ability to work and you have a job and all that. So you'll be treated as any people who are Canadians or long-term residents in the same way. I mean, you're not being treated differently because you're a newcomer. Mm-hmm. In that sense, you're treated differently if you're a newcomer in terms of language help. But aside from that, that's it.
I think that currently there is, so there are certainly have always been movements within the mental health field to advocate for cultural issues, international students' issues, as well as the impact of systemic racism, institutionalized racism, systemic inequities, and structural inequities. I think that because of the current pandemic, and because of the Black Lives movements, and because of increased awareness thanks to films like this, there is increasing social awareness of it, especially with the newer generation, the Twitter generation, the Facebook generation. It's helping, and in the mental health field, like Hong Fook has been one of the forefront agencies in promoting cultural competency training for many years, and at the university level, we also have been looking at increasing awareness of what we call EDI issues now, the term like, you know, of equity, diversity, and inclusion. That is now one of the current upcoming trends in training and education to promote systems where there's more equity, more recognition of the diversity and inclusiveness, whether it's because of culture or because of sexual orientation, or because of other factors that divides us, to ensure that there's equitable care. From the pandemic, even right now, we see that there is a lot of inequity coming out just from who gets sick and the degree of illness. From the Black Lives movements, it's coming out, obviously. In news in Canada, the treatment of the law and police system for not only Blacks, but also other colors, other racialized groups, including the Asian group, the BC example of a BC Asian student nurse that was dragged around by the RCMP officer that was in the news, for instance. So these incidents are becoming critical incidents to really spur us on for training at the training level, changes in the training level. So what we need to move up is the systems level, so that the immigration settlement sector have more awareness of the mental health issues involved. Again, Hong Fook, and I've some help in that, has also been leading the way of training settlement workers in this area, but there certainly needs still a lot of work to be done.
Thank you so much. I see Kelly is back with us, so I feel as though we have run out of time. But I just want to reiterate, I learned so much from this conversation, and I want to thank the panelists for allowing me to be part of it and for moderating. And I'll now throw it to Kelly.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you, panelists. What a wonderful conversation. I'm so appreciative that you would share your time and thoughts. And thank you, Ying Wang, for making such a beautiful film. So we are almost at the end of Rendezvous with Madness. The Rendezvous with Madness Festival ends on the 25th. However, there are still a few films available to see. You can go to workmanarts.com to check out the schedule for the films, and as well, we have our Rebuilding Resilience exhibition. There is a virtual tour that you can sign up for as well. So again, thank you to our panelists and to our host Megan and to the ASL interpreters and captioners. Have a lovely afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone. Yeah.